I already had a taste for trowels, cement, anything to do with masonry. It showed an early inclination for sculpture.
Great Women in Art is a podcast produced by AWARE, Archives of Women Artists Research and Exhibition, in collaboration with the INA, with the support of Maison Veuve Clicquot and the Ministry of Culture for Délégation à la transmission des savoirs et à la démocratisation culturelle.
Les grandes dames de l'art.
Great Women in Art. Great Women.
Les grandes dames de l'art.
Les grandes dames de l'art.
The podcast Les Grandes Dames de l'Art gives voice to the women artists of the 20th century. They talk about their work, their life, the world surrounding them, and their conquests. Let's search for their presence, their secrets. Let's find the hidden stories of women artists while listening to their voices. We would like you to discover the singular voice of Germaine Richier, the third great sculptor of the second half of the 20th century. Her short career lasted barely more than 25 years, from 1933 to 1959. However, she is one of the rare women to have been internationally successful, very early on in her career, in the 1940s, 1950s. She is also the first woman to have a retrospective of her work shown at the Modern Art Museum in Paris in 1956. Her figurative work breaks away from the fashionable abstract paintings made by the École de Paris, but it is also different from the figurative work made by another great sculptor, Alberto Giacometti, born a year before her. Germaine Richier's originality is her combination of human and animal and organic in strange hybrid works, utterly original for her time. She makes one single short appearance on French television a few weeks before her death, on the 26th of June, 1959. She is surrounded by her works at the Galerie Grosvaux. Too weakened to speak, she listens to Max Ernst pay tribute to her work. Her voice will thus only be recorded on the radio. In 1955, the weekly cultural radio program L'Art et la Vie, by Georges Charansol, visits the studios of 5 sculptors. The last studio, that Georges Charansol describes as picturesque and full of charm, is Germaine Richier's. She is then 53. In her studio, several women are there to be interviewed. There is the writer and résistante Clara Malraux, the novelist Françoise Sagan, and lastly, a painter, Maria Elena Vieira de Silva, with whom she recently made a collaborative work. At the journalist's request, she talks about her childhood and youth. She studied at the Beaux-Arts in Montpellier for 4 years, and straight away after that, a rare feat, entered the studio of the sculptor Louis-Jacques Guige.
I was born in Provence, southeast of France, in a tiny village named Grance, between Miramas and Salon. I was wet nursed in La Crau. Then we settled in Montpellier, where I attended the School of Fine Arts. I spent my youth in Montpellier.
And there you had a rather strange teacher. He had studied with Rodin, right?
A very strange man, whom I found extremely intelligent. His name was Gig. He was pretty eccentric. And yet, I don't know, maybe it was not his teaching, but rather his free spirit. I often thought about him, and I still do very often.
You entered directly the Sculpture Academy, when, in general, sculptors start out as painters, writers, architects, or whatever. But you chose sculpture immediately.
Immediately, yes. I already had a taste for trowels, cement, anything to do with masonry. It showed an early inclination for sculpture.
She then moved to Paris with the hope of being taught by Antoine Bourdelle, of whom she discovered the work at the Opéra of Marseille. She was his student from 1926 to 1929.
The Opera House in Marseille had just opened, and I had seen the great low relief by Bourdelle. And for the first time, I was looking at a sculpture that pleased me. I experienced a sort of a shock. At that time, I wanted to go to Paris, and I thought Bourdelle could be my teacher. Instinctively, I would say his name aloud.
Unlike Alberto Giacometti and other of Bourdelle's students that say that the master didn't teach them much, Germaine Richier developed her clay modeling and stone carving skills. She also learned to shape following a model. There is mutual respect between the teacher and the student. Bourdelle is fond of the one he calls his number or his nightingale. She always sings while working. She is the only woman to have worked in his private studio.
I don't know if I fully understood then. I was not even trying to understand or admire, but the contact with Bourdelle, the definitions, the way he taught, he was so simple, no frills. I was enchanted because I could see. He opened my eyes. Bourdelle taught me how to read a shape, how to see. He taught me how to see. Now, when it comes to teaching years down the road, I'm not so sure that I'm in favor of teaching, but in any case, meeting Bourdelle was decisive for me.
Richier's first works are busts, a subject she developed during her whole life. She says the busts teach her to mentally divide the shape of the face, that she then deconstructs into triangles. It also enables her to combine the work of the hand with the work of the mind.
Like many sculptors, I started out making busts, studies, sketches, and I would analyze the shapes that fascinated me. It was like practicing.
What do you mean by that?
Well, analyzing shapes, trying to place a nose, to hook a nose to a forehead, positioning an eye.
A submission to reality?
Yes, that's it, a submission.
At that time, were you still chiseling stone and wood?
Precisely. At that time, I was using wood or stone for the busts or those shapes I was making. It was sort of a learning process with a material I was attracted to and that I worked with for some time, a few years even. But now I practically never use stone nor wood.
Richier's sculptures are not only hybrid subjects between humanity, animality, and vegetation. Her strange figures allude to the anxiety of her time, a world devastated and in between two wars. They also carry deeper questionings. How much can impulse transform what is human? What are the boundaries of the inhumane, the non-humane, the animal? While the journalist offers his impressions of her sculptures, Germaine Richier concludes with a word that sums up his comments, both figuratively and literally: the idea of the root.
We get the feeling that in your sculpture you try to go back to nature, insects, twigs, and branches. It might be unconscious, but it's the impression that the beholders have.
No, it's not unconscious, because in order to go back to essential shapes, it might be pretentious, but I thought I had to start from the roots of things, the roots like the taproot of a tree.
Germaine Richier was famous. She was invited to teach in Zurich, where she went into exile during the war, but also on her return to Paris. That is maybe why she is so precise and answers without hesitation when the journalists question her on her work method. We can ask ourselves, with regret, why he doesn't ask her about the actual work and its content.
This strange construction in wire and wood. What does it represent for you, Germaine Richier?
Oh, it's a frame, the starting point of a sculpture. With the wire, I roughly shape up the figure. Here we have a six-headed horse, and it's the skeleton, the backbone.
And then you will fill it up with clay?
I don't know yet, with clay or plaster. I already made a piece with plaster. I'll see, it depends.
But before the skeleton, did you make a sketch, a scale model?
Yes, a small sketch, and then I constructed the wireframe to size.
Faithful to your first sketch?
Oh no, not necessarily faithful. If I like the result, I will have it molded. If I feel it can be made in bronze, I will have it cast in bronze. Otherwise, it's what happens to many sculptures. All of them do not come through. We let them die because they don't always give us what you want them to give.
And how do statues die?
Oh, they die natural death, they dry up, the clay crumbles, or they get broken.
On the 17th of October 1959, André Parinaud, producer and presenter of the Tribune des Arts, chooses to dedicate the first programme of the season to women painters and sculptors. Alongside him, the art critic Alain Jouffroy moderates a debate with the artists Germaine Richier, Dora Maar, Maria-Hélène Vieira da Silva, and Léonore Fini. All of them are in the news, either due to an exhibition or at an artistic event. The programme is the first to so clearly question women's place in the art world, and it is two men asking. This nowadays frequently asked question was an unusual one at the time, and the women artists find it difficult to answer. Accepting to define oneself by gender is risking being constrained to the category of feminine art. Defining oneself solely as an artist and refusing to be categorized is much easier during the 1950s and before feminism.
Comment se fait-il cependant que les femmes sculpteurs...
Why is it that female sculptors are less visible and less honored than their male counterparts?
Est-ce parce qu'il n'y a peu de femmes sculpteurs?
Is it because there are so few female sculptors? Or because men deny them some rights?
No, men do not deny women any rights. Proportionally, there are far fewer female sculptors than male sculptors. But the few female sculptors that matter, who come forward, they're given the same rights as men.
In your work, you never encountered any difficulty because you were a woman?
Oh, not at all. No difficulty whatsoever. And I would not see why, because nowadays the doors are open for both men and women, women and men.
It seems that working with a hammer, with a wire, or the various materials used in sculpture might be a bit difficult for women. Could this explain why there are far fewer female sculptors than male sculptors?
Wait, now you're talking about the physical aspect of things, which has nothing to do with the logic of things. Again, on the contrary, it seems to me that doors are opening rather easily for women. And then why should we insist on making such differences between women and men?
Germaine Richier's reflection is based on recent achievements, such as women's voting rights secured in 1944, equal instruction practiced since 1924. Richier is part of the first generation that can believe in equality. Her fast recognition in the art world and the respect her master Bourdelle showed her gave her a favourable context to believe in this equality. We can nonetheless notice that these women artists are asked about the sacrifices made concerning family life. Of course, this question is never asked to men artists.
Could it be that a woman artist is so much taken, so much possessed by her art, that she sacrifices a family life for the sake of her art?
No, it's not the case. You know that. It's a matter of everyday life and being human. If you have sick people around you, you take care of them. If you must go buy food, you do it, and I believe a man would do the same.
For example, family life was not for you.
Oh, family life can be great. It makes life human. The word human sounds silly, but it's true because we love the people around us. They give us life, and it has nothing to do with being an artist. It's a problem for all of us. Not all of us are sculptors or painters. And I think all women, including housewives, share the same feeling.
In other words, a working woman has the same problems you have.
Absolutely, a working woman, for me, it's just as if she sculpted or painted, and I believe that inwardly, deep in her heart, she has the same problems we have. So you don't have women artists on one side. There is no barrier. You have women, and women, after all, are not that remote from men. I don't see why we separate women from men. We're both part of a whole.
Coordinated by Mathilde Croix and the Aware team. Directed by Élodie Royer. Music by Julian Ogil. Credits, Andrew Nelson. Sound editing, Basile Beaucaire. Scientific advisors, Catherine Gonard and Marjorie Micucci. Translation of the artist's voice, Eve Dair. French voice, Camille Morino. English voice, Lou Doyon.